What's a grammatical mistake that many people make and you dislike? Story 1. I've been seeing apart instead of apart a lot lately. This one is especially irritating because they have opposite meanings. A part of versus apart from. Apart, these things go together. We consider her a part of our family. Apart, these things do not. Apart from her husband, we all get along. Story 2. Less a grammatical mistake and more a formatting one, but wall of text is still a pervasive problem online. Answer: mood. I still internally wrath that in most formal published text, an extra space between paragraphs is not commonplace. It makes sense on paper, as it uses less paper, and in theory the indent should make it obvious enough. However, when the indent is so small the brain can ignore it, lacking this double space makes the two paragraphs read muddily. Without it, the brain may read quickly and misunderstand the text. Story 3. When they add an S at the end of a word to pluralize it. I went to a Mexican restaurant the other day with the word tacos written on the wall. It just annoys me for some reason, lol. Answer: yes, or family names. Merry Christmas from the Smiths. There's nothing to possess in that statement, so an apostrophe is not needed. Also, when there's the attempt to use the apostrophe to indicate possession, some people may write something like, "This is the Smith's house." It's Smith's house because a family is plural. To clarify, I don't actually get upset about this, and it doesn't keep me awake at night. It's just something I have noticed a lot over the years. Story 4. A costumer makes costumes. A customer buys them. They're sequins, not sequence. You sell something or that something is for sale. Story 5. I'm an attorney, and it's shocking how many attorneys don't know that the plural is attorneys general, not attorney generals. Answer: I am also a lawyer. I specialize is drafting. The number of lawyers who don't understand basic grammar is astonishing. There are so many clauses that are completely nonsensical and self-defeating because lawyers can't grammar and clients just assume the giant mess of a clause incorrect because it's too complicated for them to understand. Restrictive clauses are notoriously bad for this. Tip to all: a good lawyer will draft clauses clear enough for laypeople to understand. A bad lawyer will overcomplicate clauses as a way to have job security and to sound smart. Story 6. Loose instead of lose. There is just no excuse for it. Meaning are widely different. The words sound different and the correct version is fudged shorter. Next time I see someone do that shoot, I'm turning them into grammar Nazis. Story 7. Using apostrophes to pluralize words, chairs, etc. The most egregious part is that most people who do this seem to only do it about half the time, so they're not even consistent with their misuse. It makes me wonder what internal rule set they're following to decide when an apostrophe means plural or not. Story 8. I've seen this a lot lately. I'm a bit biased towards that. The word is biased. You have a bias, therefore you are biased. Story 9. When people don't know the difference between lie and lay, you are lying down. You are laying the baby down for a nap. Story 10. Oxford commas. I will go down with this ship, but using them is the only right way to speak English. Without them, your list gets jumbled up, and the last part of it usually ends up as clarification for whatever it follows. He was a friend, a husband, and a father to 2 children. Read the last part. Just read it. Yes, I rest my case. Use Oxford commas. Mic drop. Story 11. Complete disregard for grammar, punctuation, and sentence structure in general. It's hard enough to communicate when you do all of this stuff correctly. Story 12. Less versus fewer. There are fewer cups of water. There is less water. Fewer, used for things you can count. Less, quantities that can't be counted. Answer: I did not learn the correct usage as a child, at least it was never really pointed out. I still mix them up as an adult, but at least I notice and cringe when I hear what I've just said. I'm trying to improve. Special thanks to my coworker Beth, who always points out my mistake. Some people genuinely appreciate being corrected so that they can improve their language skills. Story 13. Misusing literally to mean definitely, claiming I could care less, and saying irregardless. Story 14. The misuse of reflexive pronouns. Contact John or myself. Only you can do something to yourself. That's how reflexive pronouns work. Story 15. It's always been rain, rain, but I developed an instant migraine last week when I saw rain substituted for rain. Story 16. Data is already a plural. Unless you're referring to the Star Trek character Mr. Data, datas is not a word. Story 17. Writing that an actor was casted or typecasted in a movie. Those words are the same in the past tense as the present tense. Story 18. Begs the questions, when used to mean raises the question and not the logical fallacy. Several orders of magnitude. When something is not at least 1000x greater. Also, when someone clearly asks for grammar mistakes and some users give phrase misuse instead. Story 19. Oh, also, you see this one all the time on movie subs. She was 22 when she was casted as Jennifer. Cast, cast. The word is fudge cast. Story 20. When they put their punctuation outside of quotation marks. Example, she went to the store. Typing women instead of woman when referring to one woman. This is typically just a typo, but it drives me nuts. The your, there, and their problem. At the very least, figure out the difference between your and your. Should of instead of should have. Same with could of. A lot instead of a lot. And just a pet peeve, but when there's too much text language, acronyms, and abbreviations. A little is fine, but the more there is, the less intelligent they look. Story 21. English is not native language, and I learned it throughout the years trying to perfect it. Nothing annoys me more than native speakers using there, and there wrongfully. Lately, loose and lose have been added to the list. Story 22. I'm fairly certain I've only heard these from people in the US, so I suppose at this point it's an entirely different version of English, and maybe I should just accept that haha, don't take it personal, instead of personally, and many other words that should end in ally, addicting instead of addictive, all of a sudden instead of all of a sudden, saying weary when they mean wary, on accident instead of by accident. The list goes on. ETA. Ooh, I just remembered one that grinds my gears big time. I substances it across the floor instead of dragged. How on earth did that happen? Story 23. Here in Australia, a common phrase is hotting up, as in it's hotting up outside or things are hotting up. It drives me batty. It's heating up, you bunch of knobs. Story 24. My boyfriend, girlfriend, and is it's my boyfriend's and my boyfriend's pizzas. You're not being Pacific enough, should've. There. Story 25. When they type, thank you, their name without the comma. Correct? Thank you, Amy. Wrong. Thank you, Amy. Edit. Mostly I am annoyed when there should be a pause, but isn't phrased correct due to missing the comma. If I am talking to someone or reading that there doesn't need to be a pause, then it isn't much of a problem for me. This is just a personal pet peeve of mine. Story 26. People who don't know the difference between plural and possessive, so they mistakenly add an apostrophe whenever they mean more than one of something. Example: idiots, morons, losers. Story 27. When writing a story, you don't flush out a character or plot line. You flesh out a character or plot line, as in adding meat to the bare bones you've got. Flushing out means rather the opposite of what you're trying to say. Story 28. People mixing up e.g. and i.e. e.g. means for example, i.e. means that is. They are not interchangeable. Story 29. The run-on sentences, whole paragraphs of 15 thoughts with not a single period or comma. These people were raised by wolves. Story 30. So many. A few that I see frequently. A lot is not a word. A lot does not mean the same thing as a lot. All the sudden is not correct. Mute point is not correct. Should-of frequency of use makes me lose hope. Story 31. Some new ones I'm seeing on Reddit a lot lately. Saying advise when they mean advice. Similarly, saying marinade when they mean marinate. Story 32. This has been coming up a lot recently. The term is martial law. Not martial law. I dislike being that pedant, but I have been pushed beyond my limit. Story 33. Not grammatical, but when people spell definitely. Less common with spell check, but where is the A coming from? Story 34. Not sure if this counts, but recently I've been hearing a lot of people say all of the sudden rather than all of a sudden, which is the way I've always heard it. Drives me crazy. Also substituting when with whenever in places that it doesn't make sense. Story 35. It seems most people only know there and forget the other two spelling variations of it. Ticks me off every time I see something like, their dog is really cute, or they're so rude. I can't stand it. Story 36. Anyways, guys, is wrong. It's supposed to be anyway. Amber Scholl says it all the time, and it drives me nuts. Story 37. Mixing up there, and there. Also, mixing up two and two. It happens way too much, and damn it, no, this would not be spelt way too much. Story 38. Using irregardless. Using the term literally when they mean figuratively. Writing I am a woman instead of I am a woman. I forget. I seen it. Could have, would have. Misusing then and than. Whilst, I know this one is correct, but I dislike the word and prefer while. Story 39. One using there when you mean there and your when you mean your. Two long walls of text not separated into paragraphs. Story 40. I could care less instead of the correct way. I couldn't care less listen to what you're saying. That means that you do care, at least somewhat. Story 41. When people, often in the UK, use the word "are" when they mean "our," they generally don't even sound remotely the same. Story 42. In Russian, basically the word for his, her, and their, as possessive adjectives, are one word. But people try to say, drives me fudge insane. Story 43. The improper use of myself. I see it used all the time instead of I and me, which are nearly always what should be used instead. I dislike it so much. I have a theory about why I see it so often, but it's just a theory and something I can't fix anyway, so I try to overlook it. Story 44. Not exactly grammatical, but pronunciation. I studied Italian for 3 years, and the amount of people who call bruschetta by way of saying bruschetta has started to pain me. It's actually pronounced bruschetta. Story 45. Not a rule, but a grammar suggestion. When to use me or I in a sentence with 2 or more people. When we say, "This is a picture of me," it is the same if you add more people to the picture. This is a picture of my mother and me. Most people use I here. When we say, "I am going to the store," it is the same if you are going with more people. Johnny, Jane, and I are going to the store. Story 46. Try and. You try to do things. Saying, "I'm going to try and get into college," tells me that you are both going to try and that you are going to get in. And if that's the case, it largely invalidates the use of the word try in the first place. You can just say, "I'm going to get into college." Story 47. I fly into a rage when you're using your instead of your. E.g., when someone replies, "You're crazy," I have to respond with, "My crazy what? Come on, tell me. I am going crazy trying to figure out this puzzle." Story 48. Apostrophes where there shouldn't be one. It's so bad that we treat every plural word with an S at the end like it needs an apostrophe. Example, I go swimming on Wednesdays. Story 49. Dangling participles, unhyphenated compound adjectives, preterites where past participles should be used. Story 50. English football pundits love the word lackadaisical, but more often than not, they pronounce it lackadaisical. I assume from incorrectly assuming that lax is just short for lackadaisical. Story 51. Incorrectly placed apostrophes and also adding S at the end of random words. That book is mine's. Story 52. I'm knee-deep in this thread and haven't seen anyone mention it's used when the writer means it's. Grinds my gears and makes my teeth hurt. Story 53. When did everyone decide that there's a T at the end of a cross? Also, when the hell did gut become a medical term? Story 54. I see so many posts that don't use the right tense. So I go to the store and see my old friend and say hi. If you're telling a story that's already happened, it should be past tense. So I went to the store and saw my old friend and said hi to her. Story 55. The improper use of next weekend drives me nuts. If it's Monday, the weekend coming up is this weekend. The weekend after that is next weekend. Why can't everyone understand this? Story 56. Could would should of have never read a book in their fudge lives, apparently. Lo. And behold, POV, worm's eye view. Could would should of. English speakers who don't comprehend English at a basic level. I was weary of the nearby bear. Many unlikely soporifics out there apparently could would should of. Did I mention how much I dislike this one? Story 57. Using a subject pronoun where an object pronoun is appropriate. Example, the boss stopped by to talk to Dave and I yesterday. Story 58. I have two. Could would should of instead of have. Apostrophes being used for plurals is the worst, though. Multiple plurals in a sentence, but only specific ones have the apostrophe. How do they choose which to use it for? Story 59. When people say they borrowed something to a friend, No, you lent them something. They borrowed it from you. Story 60. FTR, I can forgive or overlook the first few of these if English is not someone's first language. It's a tough language to learn if it's not your first language, or so I've heard. Misusing there, or there. Misusing your and your. Misusing two and two. Saying irregardless when it's regardless. When someone says they did a 360 when trying to communicate that said person has done some kind of about face or a complete change or turnaround, when what would be accurate is to say that they did a 180 BC of how many degrees are actually in a circle, using loose, when what they mean is lose. Story 61. I've scrolled so far and can't believe I haven't seen this yet. I absolutely can't stand when people mix up worse and worst. Story 62. It is not I could care less. It does not even make sense at all. Yet I have seen it so many places, even in movies and books. Story 63. One I see on Reddit a lot is lead being used as the past tense of lead. It's led. I can see why it might be confusing since the past tense of read is read after all. But nope, it's LED. Story 64. Addressing an envelope to the Smith family. The Smiths, correct, versus the Smiths, incorrect. Furthermore, the Binks family, correct. The Binkses, correct. The Binks, not correct. Doesn't help that Siri continually makes the wrong suggestion. Story 65. When people say try and instead of try to, for example, I'm going to try and explain this versus I'm going to try to explain this, try to is the correct one. Story 66. Using much instead of many. Like there's so much choices, there are many choices, not much choices. Story 67. Anytime I is used incorrectly instead of me. Example, it's correct to say thank you for bringing lunch for me. So you would say, thank you for bringing lunch for my sister and me. Not, thank you for bringing lunch for my sister and I. Story 68. Brought instead of bought. If you buy it, you bought it. If you bring it, you've brought it. FFS, it's not that hard. Story 69. No capitalization, no punctuation. They just write on and on in one long run on sentence with no periods, commas, or concept of when the reader is supposed to stop, to think a pause, and to when they fill their posts, writings, letters, with their lack of grammatical knowledge and expect people to understand what the hell they are talking about when they are talking to the audience who are there to read something useful. Story 70. People who still think you can't end a sentence with a preposition. Grammarly's allergy to not only, but also constructions. The comma splice variant, i.e., using a comma before a coordinating conjunction when the following clause is not independent. ChatGPT has adopted this error with a vengeance. It's clearly a rhetorical comma, resembling a speaker's pause, as I just demonstrated. Perhaps English is evolving that way, which is fine. It's when errors like these, or could've, see, are done unknowingly that they're especially a problem. Story 71. When people pronounce an S sound as a hosh. My wife watches American yoga videos, and for some reason, a lot of them say shretch, not stetch, etc. This really pushes my button. I've started to notice people in the UK doing it too. I don't like it. Story 72. Also, bar and grill makes me fudge crazy. It's a grill. Are you cooking on the front end of a car? Because a grill is what goes on a car. You don't normally cook there. LOL. Story 73. People saying acrost. They spell it across and pronounce it acrost. Or maybe it's acrost, like amongst. I don't want to understand it. Story 74. In speech, when the people say Pacific, when they actually mean specific. I'm currently in a college-level classroom where the instructor keeps saying, "Now code the Pacific parameters." Oh. Story 75. In beginning to accept that this is some kind of shift in dialect rather than a true mistake, but I dislike it. X needs washed instead of X needs to be washed or X needs washing. Story 76. The needs washed erroneous conjugations. This shirt needs washed. Her computer needs fixed, etc. It is a pet peeve more than a dislike, though. Story 77. Not knowing when to use I or me. Example, my brother and I went to the movie. Would you like to go to the movie with my brother and me? Both sentences are grammatically correct. I is subjective, which means it's used when the speaker is the subject of the sentence or the doer of the action. Me is objective, which means it's used when the speaker is the object of the sentence or the receiver of the action. A Turk to always get this right is to remove any additional nouns and try the sentence with just I or me. Then see if the sentence still makes sense. I went to the movie, would you like to go to the movie with me? Story 78. Lately, I see a lot of people online mixing up worse and worst. I've seen it happen so often that I wondered if I was wrong about them and had some sort of Mandela effect. But no, it just seems that there's a generation who either use them the other way around or just aren't very good at the English language. Story 79. I've read about 25 entries so far, and most people are complaining about spelling errors and homophone swaps. I don't consider these grammar mistakes. A grammar mistake would be a misplaced modifier or pronoun disagreement. Story 80. Oh my God, the inappropriate and overuse of the ellipses. It's not a period. It indicates thoughts trailing off. It is a rarely used piece of punctuation. Stop. Story 81. Not necessarily grammar, but one of my biggest linguistic peeves is fake erudition. When people use grammar or vocabulary that they think makes them sound smarter, but they use it incorrectly. Whom said this? Or to whom am I speaking to? Are two examples I've encountered today. Story 82. If you can count it, use fewer. Otherwise, use less. Fewer drops, less water. Fewer people, less populous. Fewer problems, less problematic. I think there is an actual effort to erase fewer to simplify global English, and I both understand and dislike it. The irony is I roll my eyes at the whom people while being rabidly pro-fewer. Story 83. I was sat also using I when it should be me. Less fewer. All signs of pompous illiteracy. My people who probably hold their table knife as though it is a pen. I could go on. Story 84. Even professional newscasters do this. 101 is not pronounced 101. It's 101. Story 85. Loose instead of lose. Substances instead of dragged. Could care less instead of couldn't. On accident instead of by accident. Story 86. I seen it instead of I saw it. I hear this all the time. It always makes my eye twitch. This is part of the reason why people assume that people from our region are just dumb rednecks. Story 87. Could care less. Oh, could you? Then go ahead, let me see you care less. From younger people, say less. No, the idiom is say no more. Story 88. He did good on the test. Good is not a synonym for well. When I hear he did good, I expect to learn he gave to charity or rescued a puppy. Story 89. When people say I instead of me. Dan bought Carrie and I chocolate. It's me. Dan bought Carrie and me chocolate. Not I. Even smart people make this mistake. I think they think just because you add a person me becomes I, but it doesn't. I dislike it. Story 90. When people say they're weary of something when they really mean they're wary of something, people misusing wander and wonder or rain and rain. Story 91. Then talks about time. Example, I put my socks on, then my shoes, then is when things are being compared. I always remember the funny phrase, if someone else says, I'd rather be pissed off than pissed on. Really? 'Cause I'd rather be pissed off than pissed on. LOL. Story 92. I could care less. You mean you couldn't care less. You mean the scale of your care is genuinely so low that it can't go lower. Story 93. So many people are afraid to say me that they butcher the nominative objective case constantly. Every time I hear it, my mom took I and my sister. I die a little inside, and I'm fighting a losing battle. It gets worse every day. Story 94. Every time I see someone having a bad day, I tell them, there. In all seriousness, I am friends with too many dyslexic people to really be mad at spelling mistakes. Story 95. Him going to die on the who hill, but him well aware that whom is doomed. I get the wildest looks when I use whom, like him Thurston howled third. Story 96. The past participle of to go is gone, not went. When I hear I have went, it makes me cringe. Say I have gone to the movies, I have gone to the grocery store, and I went home. It's easy. Story 97. I have a couple I've been noticing. Peak versus peak experience. Two very different things. And typing aw instead of aw when something is cute. Aw. Story 98. They say irregardless. Fudge dislike that. My oncologist used that word once. I never went back to see her again. I just lost all respect. Thankfully, I'd been cancer-free for many years by then, so the visits were a waste of time and money anyway. Story 99. Sometimes I wonder if Germans are better at English grammar than native speakers, because we get taught the actual grammatical rules, especially when watching American movies and/or YouTube videos and/or Twitch streams. Story 100. Not knowing when to use my friend and I versus my friend and me. A perfect trick to this is to take out the friend and ask, okay, how would I caption this if it were just me? X. Here's a picture of my fiends and I. Without the friend, it would be, here's a picture of I, which doesn't make sense. Here it would be correct to say, here's a picture of my friends and me. My friends and me are going to the store. Here, me are going to the store would be incorrect, so you know I is correct. Tangentially related, I also dislike when people pluralize things by just using S, X, my husband, and